what you told me. That's not what you told me 10 years ago. You told me the revolution had the pause button. So I had to apologize.
That's right.
And talk to her about, yeah, I learned that lesson the hard way, you know. And now I don't want you to go through that, you know. So, so that's where I am now. I've been led into working with herbalism and another connection with the land and how it's been healing just to sit in nature and how I could have never come back to sit here today if I hadn't gone out onto the land and start, you know, like what am I doing? You're gonna have to tell me something.
Yes.
Like what am I doing? You know, how to fortify myself, how to rejuvenate my dreams, my passion, my purpose. And it's happening slowly, and I'm learning new ways of healing. Like when I started, I've always done tarot card readings, but only recently has it turned into personal development work.
Yes.
It's not like, what's going to happen next week? Just future tell. Like that's, when you get into the shadow work sides of it, when them cards tell you to do, you're like, oh. So learning how expansive healing really is through models that I feel are more along the lines of ancestral work, using herbalism and land for, and tarot and crystals and vision boards and all that to work toward healing and listening to the messages of the ancestors, what they have to share with us, which they're always trying to let us know, you know, what's going on. And then I'll sort of end with the young people that I used to work with. Several of them have gone on, like I said, one has started a nonprofit around anti-violence. And she came the other day and was like, you know, we need to really be sure to tie healing work to this. It can't just be this over here. We need to have some Reiki sessions. We need to be doing, look at that. And then a young man who was in the program doing poetry has since works in the North End now, has an annual event called The Healing in the North End. It's art and music and poetry, and he has his own bookstore now, and it's just, and then he's gardening. And Jameen, yes, shout out. And I did some herbalism workshops there, and he's like, well, we can coordinate all this together. See, they see it more quickly than they're like, this is all together. So it's just really a blessing to see the full circle, how the universe is just working with me, working with all of us to gently show us how we're supposed to show up, what we're supposed to do. And so I'm just pleased to be here. And so that's where I am, sort of starting over, but very much so an old head, having been in this work for over 15 years.
Hello? Oh.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, my name is Shira Hassan, and I'm going to talk to you about the work of two collectives in Chicago, Illinois. Two sister projects, Young Women's Empowerment Project. Hello. We started working together in '99, became a nonprofit in '02, and sunsetted in 13, 14, depending on how you look at the paperwork. And then Sage Community Health Collective, which, yes, was a sister project because it was Stacy Ehrenberg and Tanisha Jagernath, who were the principal co-founders of Sage. And they had both been hardcore, longtime YWAPers. And then Laura Brooks and myself were on the Community Advisory Council, the CAC. We all know those. And that was 2011 to 2015. So I just want to talk briefly about that. So Young Women's Empowerment Project was a project that was run by and for young people of color who had current or former experience trading sex for money for survival. We were not a social service. We were an organizing project. Every young person who worked there was between the ages of 12 to 24. Everyone was an employee or a member, and the project was hardcore. Dominique McKinney was the executive director for the last 4 or 5 years of the project. Many of you know, who's now doing other incredible work, continuing the work of the project through a campaign called Street Youth Rise Up, which was started through our research, which was a healing justice research project on our resilience and resistance to violence, which is essentially unheard of for young people in the sex trade, not only to do their own research, but also to talk about resilience and resistance, which grew out of our healing justice analysis, which honestly we had from the get. We had no language for it, and honestly, if I'm being completely real, I still don't understand a lot of the way people talk about healing justice. Our definition of it was you have the right to heal on your own terms, whatever those terms are, and that we have to confront oppressive systems that get in our way. Boom, there you go. I love all the dissertations on it, but I don't understand them.
Yes.
So the reason that we had healing justice from the get, even though we didn't use that language, was because we could not go to the doctor. We either were too young to go on our own behalf, or we were drug users, or we were people in the sex trade, and people were not going to help us, and they were not helping us. And we started tracking their lack of help, while at the same time creating our own ways of getting help. So we ran our own syringe exchange, which as far as I know of, I say this every time I say this, but as far as I know, we were the only syringe exchange that was run by poor young people of color in the country during the times that it operated, which was 2005, and it's still technically operating underground. And I really do credit us with forcing harm reduction into the conversation that was happening around healing justice, but also around so many other things like transformative justice and community accountability, because we couldn't show up in a room unless you understood how to work with us and be with us. And so it forced people to try to be like, okay, yeah, we know about harm reduction, but now you actually have to deal with us, and you need to figure out how to do that. So I think the first thing that that put us onto the scene in terms of starting to use that language and understand that was in 2005, Dominique and I met Kara Page. And shortly after that, in 2006, Gardasil, do you remember, you know what Gardasil is? Gardasil came out. And Kara was with CWPE, and I can't tell you the acronym.
Committee on Women, Population, and the Environment.
Yes. Yes. Okay. CWPE, Committee on Women, Population, and the Environment. Cool. So we meet Kara, and we're like, we are so freaked out and pissed about Gardasil. They're going to try to require it in schools, and they're requiring it at the border, they're requiring it for immigration, they're requiring it if you get locked up, they're requiring it if you're in foster care. This is like a drug that has had zero research on it. We're freaked out, we're pissed, we don't know what to do. We've always done healing justice work, we've always reversed our own overdoses, we know how to cut out an abscess, we know how to sew up a stab wound. We have no idea what to do about this drug, they're forcing us to take it. And Kara was like, well, let's write that down. Let's write down what we need to do. And we were like, oh, we can do a zine in our sleep. So we collaborated with CWPE and put out this statement on Gardasil that pissed feminists off, which we were also very used to and comfortable with. And so we were like, success, we did it right again. And so the Gardasil pamphlet was in 2006, 2007 that it finally got out there. And then that entered us into the conversation in a new way, into the healing justice conversation in a new way. And the language started coming to us that we did not understand, but I just told you what we did with it. And people started including us in a new way. And then our research got released, and that research became really useful around resilience and resistance. And we started a campaign that Tanuja Jagannath and Stacey Ehrenberg were absolutely instrumental in. So as they went on to form SAGE, they pulled a lot of YWIC with it. Now SAGE, how much do I have? I'm at time. SAGE Community Health Collective, amazing. Co-owned and really deeply informed by harm reduction. It was a collective model with a lot of, that was all co-ownership. that was QTPOC centered, transformative justice centered, and that made sure that people had access to basic health care as well as acupuncture, energy work, and had a huge impact on Chicago because it suddenly opened up a space for people to get health care that was harm reduction based, that centered community accountability, and that also allowed people to just show up whole and expect to get seen. We didn't have that. What's that? The location was amazing. Yes, the space that was built by Sage was just beautiful and showed us what we deserved in healthcare.
Yes.
Yes. Rico.
My name's Rico. I am just very, honored to be sitting next to you guys and able to share a little bit. I just turned 29, so I'm also like, I'm just a baby.
Happy birthday.
But I have been, I guess, healing justice. I started as I've been an activist my whole life ever since I was in high school, and then was always getting sick as an activist, and learned very quickly I needed to divorce from activism to be well. I went to college and became an Aztec dancer, and that's basically what got me through the whiteness of that institution. And then I wrote a thesis on Aurora Levins Morales' work, Juega Saldua's work, and Ana Castillo's work on their healing philosophies confronting the medical industrial complex. That connected me with Aurora Levins Morales, and we started with Leah and various other people, the Badass Visionary Healers in the Bay Area, which was a cute little project. We have a little healing justice statement that you can find online. But at that point, I already knew I was going to be going to medical school to do an MD PhD program in communications and media studies and medicine, conventional medicine. And I was going to study, I went to the AMC in 2012, so that's when that started. I was part of the healing justice practice space then. And I co-coordinated the healing justice practice space at the AMC in 2015 and the Insight healing justice practice space in 2015 as well. And actually, if anybody's helped or coordinated a healing justice practice space, could you just raise your hand in this room? Because there's a lot of people here who have really been fundamental to every healing justice practice space provides a new kind of, or a revitalized theory and method around what healing justice even means, is really through the praxis. So I just want to honor that. But in my work, in my research, I was really interested in, indigeneity and Chicana feminism and healing, and I was looking for, and also was really interested in all these healing justice institutions that we've all kind of named and been part of. And I was originally going to study the Rock Dove Collective, Casa de Salud, and Sage. Everyone knows. And then I was kind of tracing, where was indigenous medicine in that, and how was indigenous medicine kind of circulating in these institutions, and how had I kind of taken on an indigenous kind of identity through Aztec dance, and how indigeneity had become like a source of healing for me. And I started looking at Peru and Bolivia and Ecuador and all these Latin American countries that have indigenous medicine as part of their alternative medicine institutions. And then I was like, hold up, why am I looking all in these places? What is the United States doing? Because we actually have, since 1991, the United States has had first it was called the Office for the Study of Unconventional Medical Practices. Then it became the Office of Alternative Medicine. Then it became the National Center for Complementary and Alternative Medicine. Then it became the National Center for Complementary Integrative Health, which is what it is today.
Wow.
And I'm like, because I was into institution building around alternative medicine, and what does this mean? Where, AIDS activists and cancer activists were really part of building out and enforcing unconventional medicine, which quickly became alternative medicine, to be taken seriously by the US government, to not just be regulated against, to be thinking about how many billions of dollars were, for them it was about the money that was being spent in these alternative medicine networks. But really there's a huge use of alternative medicine. And actually how the first director of that institution was an American Indian, a Mohawk, am I done? Okay, one minute. We got a lot to talk about still. An American Indian physician who they brought on because they're like, he's the epitome of alternative or unconventional medicine. He's trained in pediatrics. He's worked through the Indian Health Service on the reservation, and he also has an MBA, Health Administration. Basically, he embodied this thing, alternative medicine, and the news labeled him a medicine man. And I took that event, and now, so originally this whole institution was dependent on indigeneity to become a thing, and they have since removed indigeneity completely, and other minorities, Latinos and Asians, particularly Black people, have been brought in to kind of create this multicultural idea of what alternative medicine is. That alternative medicine, because it's non-normative, is multicultural inherently, but it depended on this Indian prior. I'm sorry, I just written a dissertation about this, so I don't mean to make it sound complicated, but it's really relevant to how in the healing justice community, indigeneity becomes an empty word, and it becomes empty to a therapeutic when it's a political entity, and that there's over 500 nations that stake claim to having kept this land, and that when we're talking about decolonization and systemic structures in healing justice, we need to be thinking really critically about how we're talking about indigenous medicine, and it's not just a prayer circle, and it's not just drumming, and it's not just dancing and Aztec dancing like it was for me, because I'm Peruvian, Colombian, I'm not even Mexican, I'm not even Chicano, and I was opening the Alcatraz ceremony, this sunrise ceremony in Alcatraz, in honor of the takeover in 1960. I'm not going to do the year, but anyways. So wrapping that up, healing justice, indigeneity, thinking about the United States. The United States has money. Their budget is now $140 million a year. We should be having access to that money. Our research should be funded by them. And I can talk more about this, but I'm just, yeah, not.
Yeah, I'm the last one. Okay, 5 minutes. This is going to be hard. I want to start out by saying that I'm the child of a Sri Lankan queer father who, like everyone in Sri Lanka, has complex post-traumatic stress disorder from surviving colonization and our 30-plus-year civil war. I'm the child of an Irish and Roma mom who's a polio survivor. I'm second-generation disabled. And I grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is a Rust Belt fucking city full of lead, really tough, resilient, beautiful people. The end of the Industrial Revolution, working for $4.25 an hour at honey farms and shooting heroin. And